work for the I work for the ARC and working out of Nigeria, capital Abuja, and I covered West African countries in our education programming. I'm also a doctoral candidate at UMass Emirates, and my research interest has been teacher professional development as well as SEL competence of teacher in crisis and conflict setting. My presentation today focuses mostly about our work in Nigeria. And as you can see the title, it is Meeting the Academic and Social Emotional Need of Nigerian Out-of-School Children, but just specifically looking at our effort around teachers. I'll start by providing you a little bit of background around the northeastern Nigeria context. And in Nigeria, in the northeast part of the country, since 2009, there has been conflict because of the Boko Haram, and that has led displacement of so many millions of people. And specifically, this conflict affected two regions, two states in the northeastern part of the country. They are called Yobe and Borno State. However, there are also other states that are being hugely affected by this conflict. And I'm sure most of you probably know Nigeria is one of the countries with like millions of children that are out of school. And according to the recent data, there are about 10.5 million children out of school in Nigeria. And going back to the conflict, then it's a destroying effect in the education system. And since 2009, probably the figure has been changing currently. About 1,200 schools have been destroyed, and about 1,700 of schools have been closed, and that also affected teachers, and about 600 teachers have been killed, and about 19,000 have been displaced because of this conflict, and that has a tremendous impact on the education of the two states that I will be talking about. Just like many other NGOs that are operating in the northeastern Nigeria, IRC has been in northeastern Nigeria since 2014. Our programming, in addition to education, we work in health and WASH, nutrition, governance, and many other programming. But our education mainly focus on providing education access in a safe and quality environment. And there are some currently ongoing projects that are happening in Nigeria. To give you a few examples, we're programming around EIE focused on providing tutoring program for children at risk of dropping out, and also providing access to quality and safe education for out-of-school children using the non-formal learning center approach. And that's one funded by FCDO, formerly known as DFID. And we also have a programming in the Adamawa state. It's the third state that is also been affected significantly by the ongoing conflict. And this is mainly focusing on teacher professional development and also active and meaningful participation of school-based management committees. And this project is funded by GIZ. And we have a very interesting and more relevant to this conference is a USAID project, Development Innovation Venture. We are partnering with Harvard University to develop, test, and refine contextualized material for teaching and learning, social emotional learning. And we also have a massive project from ECHO, and it is focusing on non-formal learning for out-of-school children. And this is just to give you a scope of the background and the context that we're working in. Our intervention design is specifically for the non-formal learning program and mainly for FCDO project in terms of intervention design, and delivery looks like this. And the problem is like the lack of access to safe learning opportunity, and there is also lack of qualified teachers, and also most of the children who have been into the non-formal learning program provided by different NGOs or local NGOs or government, there is a lack of pathway to transition to the formal or the mainstream education. To solve this problem, we've been creating non-formal learning centers and providing alternative learning programs for the out-of-school children. And this is a 9-month program. It's a flexible time and mainly focusing on 3 areas: literacy, numeracy, and the SEL. We also have been providing teacher and learning materials for the children as well as for the teachers. We've recruited and trained and supported communities And as you know, without the community active engagement in the school development in their children's education, it's really hard to imagine that we'll get anywhere. As a result, we are working with different government stakeholders as well as community groups. Since we started this project in 2017, so far we have reached more than 120,000 children through this programming, and also we had more than 400 non-formal learning centers as well as learning facilitators. It was to mention the learning facilitator are not trained teachers by profession. However, they are community volunteers who are really feel responsible for their own children's education, and through our support using different type of modality in terms of professional development, and in connection to what Mary and her colleague earlier mentioned, we use the face-to-face training. We provide also coaching and mentoring. At the same time, we have also teacher learning circle, and in order to support the teachers. What we're hoping to see is improved literacy and numeracy and SEL skill, but also to have children transition into the formal school. And ultimately, what the impact is successful school adjustment and academic achievement, but most importantly, psychosocial well-being and adult productivity for the affected children. So I'll try to really zoom into the main topic of this presentation. This is really mainly on SEL as it relates to the teachers. I'm sure most of you probably aware, most of SEL, social emotional learning research, are mostly conducted in the global north and mainly from the United States and in Western stable context. And there is little known about whether the benefit of SEL programming holds in the humanitarian context. In response to this, the IRC has been doing multiple rigorous research. However, the findings we do have are really mixed. And in some of the countries that we have done RCTs, the result is encouraging, but in other areas, not so much. So it was really to dig deeper in terms of understanding what are the issues behind these results. Just to give you a specific example, in northeastern Nigeria through the FCDO funding, we have conducted a mixed method RST evaluating the impact of the accelerated learning program in the tutoring program. This is an after-school program for primary school children in the formal school. And the SEL result is, like I said earlier, it's mixed, but what we have seen is there is significant gain in terms of literacy and numeracy. However, in terms of the SEL outcome, in the ALP programming, orientation toward use of aggressive conflict resolution strategy has decreased, which is positive. And also in the tutoring program, the hostile attribution bias has decreased, which is also positive. But for most of the other SEL outcomes, we haven't seen significant change that is worth reporting, which also is forced us to go back to our drawing board and really trying to understand what the issues are behind that. And while the points that I mentioned earlier are more in terms of quantitative result, but with our mixed methods also had a qualitative branch. And here are some of the things that was really mentioning and important to note. For example, one of the learning facilitator says she enjoys teaching, but struggling to teach Hausa and SEL given the low level of proficiency in reading and writing. And again, these are community volunteers, not trained professional teachers. And she also reports teaching SEL is improve her own SEL social skills and confidence, ability to remain calm, reflective, and patient and thinking through consequences during decision making, which is also shows SEL is really valued by the teacher, by most of the teachers. However, it was to note the TLC to be, she found, for example, the teacher learning cycle to be the most useful professional development support they received to improve their pedagogical and subject knowledge skill, but requested additional PD support. Again, this is really to relate to Mary's and earlier presentation. It's really important to make sure that we diversify our professional development support to the teachers, especially when they are actually community volunteers who may not have proper teacher professional qualification in the past. And similarly, the coaches who are from the government and have been supervisors, not coaches in the past in their careers, And one of the things that was really mentioning here is coaches struggle to provide effective support to the learning facilitators, given limited training and lack of expertise in the subject matters area, especially in SEL. Again, this also really emphasized the need for better professional development support to anybody who's involved in the education of their children. So what are the issues? And in terms of SEL, SEL is considered new and also considered challenging to teach, to implement, and conceptually different in understanding. Concepts and activities are unfamiliar for the teachers, the coaches, and also as well as for the children. So within IRC, we again went back and tried to really dig deeper in understanding what are we not doing right and what are some of the things we need to really test out and correct. One important thing to really note is contextualization of SEL content was inadequate and did not align with local belief and values and priorities. This again relates to the call to action. If we are going to produce any content and materials, especially from other places, it's really important to put the teachers in the driver's seat and making sure that we are actually listening to them and also include their local beliefs, values, and priorities. And the other important thing that really is worth mentioning is teacher support package in our observation did not lead to subject expertise in SEL. This again, also the implication is that the type of teacher professional development or support that we're providing is not adequate enough. That means we need to do more in terms of supporting the teachers, valuing their opinions, their expertise and experiences, but also providing them avenues for them to develop the subject expertise in different formalities. And the other are also some of the hypotheses that we have been currently testing on. But in relation to the current issue, I think it was to note about 2 points that I already mentioned. So the crucial question here is, so how can we make this concept appropriate, feasible, desirable, low cost, impactful, and scalable? And this requires us really, again, to think through hardly and what are some of the things that we need to pay attention. One thing that came out from our discussion internally is we need to make sure that we focus on the teachers. A lot of our materials and a lot of the work that we've been doing, and not just within IRC, but in a lot of the humanitarian intervention, are children-facing materials. And it oftentimes really don't pay us as much attention as it deserves on the teachers, whether it's their well-being in terms of their active participation in the project and so on. So actions that IRC currently is taking in order to really listen to the teachers' expertise and experience and opinions, also to enable teachers and prepare them to deliver quality instruction in the classroom, also to support teachers' well-being and to respect and prioritize teachers. There are currently important projects that are happening that actually address some of these concerns. For example, the USHC Project, which IRC is partnering with the Harvard University, is a lab, develop, test, and refine contextualized material for teaching and learning social emotional learning, worth mentioning here. This project really trying to put teachers on the driver's seat and also localizing and contents and contextualizing and using and sourcing materials and songs, games, and everything from the teachers. And this also at the center is using behavioral science and human-centered design approach to improve teachers' uptake of SEL in the Northeast Nigeria that we're currently working. So our approach on, especially on behavioral science and design, people respond to differently based on their context, like whatever is working in New York City is not possibly be responding the same way in Northeastern Nigeria. So it requires us to really make sure that context matters. Even when we have strong theory of change, it may not result in the intended outcome for different reasons. So drawing on behavioral science theories and evidence from psychology, economics, and neuroscience and other social science, we're trying to create this material as appropriate for our end users. And in the meantime, we're also using tools from design to include users at every step of the process. This is a very important point to emphasize. Teachers need to be involved in things that matters to them. And for example, we are creating SEL content. They should be involved from the start, from the design to the implementation and reflection and improvement. So some of the tools that we're using are really allowing our users to be involved at every step of the process, learn from it, and it's also requires us to really test and retest our ideas with them. So this project has two different phases. The first one is landscape research and prototyping. In all these things, the teachers are actually the one who are driving this process. So whether we were doing the landscape research and local sourcing and creating the prototype and test and designing the workshop, and also testing and retesting our prototype material at multiple times. So just to give you a scope of the outcome of the landscape research, then there are areas that are really important and significant for this conversation. Teachers' identity, teachers need valued skill local activities compared to what we have done in the past and what we are currently trying to do. These are some of the things that the landscape research finding showed us. Teacher identity, they are not only see themselves as educators, but also aspirational as role models. When it comes to teachers' needs, they are struggling to teach large crowded classrooms with difficult classroom behavior and need help to manage classroom behaviors. So that's one important significant need. And they also valued skills for the teachers. The most important life skills are discipline, obedience, respect, and tolerance. So SEL, on the other hand, isn't for life skill, but for happiness and fun for the teachers. And also local activities. They showed us over 60 different local games, songs, stories, and activities that are already in use with children to teach their local valued skills. So this is to mean that as long as we value their opinion, experiences, and expertise, we could do a better job in whatever material we are going to be producing. The product and the content will be so relevant for them, and they also feel the ownership of those products. In terms of contextualizing framing, it was to mention there are EASL Lab SEL competencies, for example. When we do the local skill framing, you can see the comparison, what is being considered as SEL competence and how it's interpreted in a Western context, for example, is different from what the local and context and with the local teachers. And this is just to showcase the importance of involving them and doing a thorough job involving and having them actively participate and engage from the start to the end. So at the moment with this project, we have produced the materials with the teachers, and we are doing implementation research. And what does dosage and quality of fidelity of implement do we observe in the school, community-based and home-based SEL intervention? How do variation in dosage and quality fidelity of implementation SEL program with student academic skills, SEL and well-being outcome? What factors hinder or facilitate the delivery of high-quality implementation of SEL programming in EI setting is our implementation research questions. There are some works that we're also doing around COVID adaptation, and this is a project that's funded by Lego Foundation, not necessarily in Nigeria currently. However, this is really in response to the recent COVID phenomenon, and our response has been to create distance learning content for children who are unable to access the predictable supportive routine of a school and will miss opportunity to learn build social and emotional skills. Similar to the other USHC project that I earlier mentioned, this also actively involves the teachers at the driver's seat, and we also have content advisor groups, local partners, and also it goes through the different stage in terms of prototyping and testing, ensuring that the teachers actually are the primary active participant of this process. Before I end, I just wanted to mention that I think it is important in relation to this call. Teachers matter. Whatever type of education intervention we are doing in conflict setting or elsewhere, if we're not really valuing their opinion, experience, and we don't listen to them and not including their concerns and priorities in our intervention, and if we don't pay attention to their well-being, it is really hard to imagine any education intervention will be successful. So as a final note, I would really encourage us all to make sure that we put the teachers at the driver's seat. We need to really respond to their needs and also value their opinion and voices. If we do that, and I can imagine that whatever education intervention we are doing will lead to a positive gain and also positive learning outcome for the children they are teaching. Thank you very much.
Adane, thank you so much. What a powerful presentation. Really, yeah, incredible work. Thank you so much for sharing. I think we are quite short of time, so we won't have time for Q&A, I'm afraid, but perhaps you could put, if you do have questions for Adane, do put them in the chat and he'll hopefully be able to respond to you there. And I'm sure he'd be happy to hear from you after the presentation. We do also have a full written up case study that we can share with you, but I'm sure you have lots of questions as well to put to Adane, so please do use the chat. We're going to be going back into plenary in just a few minutes. But before we do, I just, Adane really highlighted there the importance of teacher voice and teachers being in the driving seat. And we really want that to come out in this event series and as part of this call to action. And I'm hoping you're feeling inspired by what you heard in Adane's presentation, and maybe want to share your own ideas with us about the call to action. If you remember, I shared a document with you I showed you a document at the start of this event, and we'd love to hear your ideas. So if you, like Adane, are working with teachers currently and are seeing good practice, please do add it to this document. If you are working with teachers and you're seeing things that you want to change, you have recommendations, please also add that to this document. It's a GDoc. I've shared it in the link. It will be live after this event, and we really just want to hear your ideas. We're going to be working on this call to action for many weeks to come, and we want to make sure it captures your experiences and the great work we're doing. So we'll be sure to add the ideas from your presentation, Adane, and we'd love to hear from others who've joined us today to add their thoughts. So it should be open for you now. If you want to spend a couple of minutes adding your ideas, please do. And we'll be going back in plenary soon. And perhaps it will be live for gosh, at least a week. We haven't confirmed how long the document will be live, but we'll make sure we keep it going so you can add. We do have, I'm seeing about 2 minutes. So while you're adding to the document, Adane, I do see that we've got one question here asking if you have any data that shows the link between the success or failure of SEL and parents' acceptance in the home. You've got 1 minute to answer, Adane. Any data on that yet? Or perhaps to come?
In the past, we haven't had see the correlation between the two, but however, in our current project that we're working, this is actually one of the agenda, not just only with the parents, but also other stakeholders in their children's education and their perception and attitude to our SEL and how it relates to the success for the children. But at the moment, we don't have the data. Not for Nigeria, but I can check for other parts of the world that we're doing in Lebanon and other places.
Thanks, Adane. And I see a question there from, I think we might be sent back to plenary, but Adane, there is a question from Dennis about the school kidnappings in Nigeria and any protection from the government to protect teachers and students. I don't know if we might be pulled back from the room, Adane, but perhaps we can follow up with Dennis after the event because it's such an important question.
I also left my email address on the presentation. Please do reach out to me via email as well. I will try to answer as much as I can.
No, thank you so much, Adane. So we'll share the presentation and Adane's details, and please do add any thoughts to that document, the call to action that I've just shared, and then we'll see you back in the plenary room for our panel discussion in just a moment.